Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. For anybody local here in Newfoundland, this is day 5 of our state of emergency. For anybody that's not local, basically we had a snowstorm Friday night. It's Tuesday right now. Had 100 centimeters of snow, so just over 3 feet, and ever since the city has been in a state of emergency as they try to clean it up. So this is day 5. Everybody's getting a little cabin fever, so I decided to do an early episode of this beer. So the beer I got today is Black Butte Porter. The brewery is out of Bend, Oregon. It's family owned and operated. Deschutes Brewery is the name of it. I believe it's named after a river running through Bend, Deschutes. A little bit on the label. 5.2% alcohol. It says bold reputation, soft deposition, surprisingly balanced. Behold an iconic and unexpectedly complex porter that's more than meets the eye. Bottle condition, we'll talk about that in a second. And that's about it. Now, if you're like me, I love my beer. I know a little bit about beer, but I'm not a beer expert by far. Ports and stouters always got ports and stouts always got me a bit confused about the difference. So we'll talk about that. Easier said than done, which I'll talk about in a second. This beer, as I said, 5.2% alcohol. I read online, somebody described, they said dark, medium balance with lots of malty goodness and well balanced with hops. So it'll be interesting to see. As I said, it's bottle conditioned, and basically what that means is they add live yeast to the bottle when they bottle it, so it continues to condition in the bottle. And they say chocolate and coffee, creamy roasted finish. So let's pour it up and see what we think. Give my glass a quick cold water rinse. The glass I'm using, actually, it's been called a stout glass, and porters are basically in the same family. As I said, we'll talk about in a second the difference between a port and stout. The color is pretty dark, to be expected. A little bit of a coffee aroma. Definitely taste the coffee, not so much the chocolate. I'm not a big coffee person either, so. It's not bad. I've had a few stouts I like, many that I didn't like. As I said, I'm not a big coffee person, so it's not bad by any means. Ports and stouts, what's the difference? Okay, we got to go back 18th century. That's when Black Butte Porter. Okay, porters and stouts. 18th century London, porters were developed, and they became a hit. They weren't called porters at the time. They became a hit with porters, and they were people that would deliver items throughout the city. So that's how the name came about. And basically, it was a dark beer. Not a lot you can say. However, my understanding, it was low alcohol, and the term stout basically meant strong. So eventually they had porters, and then they had a stout porter, which basically meant it was a strong porter. And over time, that was reduced to just stout. And the porter itself became less recognized to the point where you couldn't really find them, and stouts pretty well took over. So realistically, porter is the mother of stouts, if that makes any sense. Originally, like today, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, because the difference between a porter and stout today, the lines are really, really blurred. As I said, originally a stout was a strong porter. However, that's not the case anymore. Nowadays, you can get strong porters and you can get weak stouts. Another difference they say in the past is that porters use malted barley, whereby stouts use unmalted roasted barley, which quite often gave it a coffee flavor. But once again, the lines have become blurred, and And that's not even the case anymore. As I said with this one, they actually describe it as chocolate and coffee. That's about it. I mean, the lines are really blurred. What was once called a stout could now be called a porter, and what was once considered a porter could now be called a stout. A lot of it comes down to basically the person brewing it. They can decide to call it a stout or a porter. Now, you'll talk to different experts. They will say, various differences between a porter and stout. However, once again, that's become pretty blurred. Porters are no longer necessarily weaker than stouts, and even the type of barley they can use is no longer specifically. So there you go. Personally, I'm not a beer expert by any means. I'm just a guy who likes my beer. I like experimenting with different types of beers. And what I've seen so far, in my opinion, the difference between a stout and a porter. I've drank more stouts than I have porters, but the difference that I find from the few that I have had is I find the stouts have a creamier mouthfeel than a porter. A porter to me, when I'm drinking it, it feels like I'm drinking your typical ale. Whereby a stout, you think of a Guinness, it just got a different feel in the mouth, almost like a creamy sensation. So for me, that would be the difference. However, I'm sure other people would disagree, and I'm sure you can find porters that would have a creamy mouthfeel, and I'm sure you can find stouts that wouldn't have that. So there you go. Now to give this one a rating, as I said, there's a few stouts that I like. However, I'm not a huge fan. Something like I love a Guinness every now and then. A rating for this one. And once again, this is only my personal preference, and as I already said, I'm not a big coffee person. So the coffee flavor is not something that I go, oh my god, I love it. But with that being said, I try to take into account my preference when I'm ranking the beers. I'm not going to rank, say, a double IPA, which I really am not a big fan. I'm not going to rate that badly just because I don't like IPAs. And same with the porters and stouts. For a porter and stout, what I think of it is just my personal opinion. And for the Black Butte Porter, my ratings, as always, out of 5, a 1 being a drain port. Don't like it, can't finish it. A 2 being not a fan, but I'll finish it. A 3 being a good beer, a 4 being a very good beer, and a 5 being the best beer ever. I think for this one, I'm comfortable giving this one a 3.0. It's a pretty good porter. I'd have another if I came across it by all means. So I think I'm comfortable giving it a 3.0. It's a good beer. If you're a coffee lover and you'd have it, you'd probably go, oh yeah, it's definitely a 3.5 or a 4. Or if you're ever a big stout and porter person, you might like it even more, or you might like it less. But I'm going to stick with 3.0 basic means. It's a good beer. I'm enjoying it, and I definitely have another. So there you go, folks. That's my rating coming from you from Snowmageddon 2020. Actually, I think right now for the month of January we're at 166 centimeters, which is a record for the area, and we still have 10 days left, so we'll see what happens. So hopefully you can join me next week. I'll try another beer. I'm still working on my 12 international beers that my friend Mike gave me. This is number 3, I believe. So hopefully you can join me next week. Until next beer, as always, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.